The big story overnight, and I'm not really sure if this is the big story or if this is just contract negotiations, but Henderson in contract out is how the London Times has it, and then it's the back page on several of the tabloids. Nerve hens. Liverpool legend in contract standoff. So this is just an agent doing his job, or we've seen this before where a tiny little crack appears and light gets through the crack, and all of a sudden what didn't seem like a realistic possibility is something that Liverpool decide, yeah, now's the time, let's shuffle through. We've got a bunch of players we need to get in the team. We've got a bunch of players who are not 31 and who are not going to cost the same wages as Jordan Henderson. He's unhappy with what has been offered, apparently, is the story. And so with 2 years left on his contract, he may well be on his way out of Liverpool. Give me some potential landing spots here before we talk about whether or not this might actually happen.
It's hard to know. Like, I mean, obviously the different reports kind of include different pieces of information. The Telegraph, for example, say Maurizio Pochettino, the former Tottenham manager who is now in charge of Paris Saint-Germain, is said to be an admirer of Henderson. So, I mean, could that be a potential landing spot? Is that something that is based in information that's being, I don't know, maybe being fed to the Telegraph or to other journalists around the place, that PSG, they're a rich club and they could certainly try and sign Artur Temik, leader and captain? Well,
I mean, you're rebuilding the midfield that won the Champions League and the league, right?
Like the other piece of detail that seems to be included in a lot of these is that Jurgen Klopp is unhappy with losing Gini Wijnaldum, that was not something he wanted to happen. And I think we saw with his performances at the Euros that he's still got a lot to offer, but there just couldn't be an agreement reached with the club, and the club weren't willing to pay his wages over the next little while and to essentially cut him loose. They were happy to lose him on a free because they weren't willing to negotiate. In a way, that puts Liverpool in a strong position, because they already have shown that if you won't come down to their level of their offer, they will happily cut you loose at some point or another. Now, the thing is, Jordan Henderson is contracted at the football club until 2023, so this could be a long, drawn-out saga for the next 2 years.
Yeah, if you could just explain how they, just say that again, so that what happened was they showed how brave they are by making Gini Wijnaldum 3 times richer. That's they flexed their muscles, and Gini Wijnaldum backed up the Brinks truck, the gold-plated Paris Saint-Germain made from oil Brinks truck, and is now one of the richest footballers in the world.
Well, my point here is...
What a disaster for Gini Wijnaldum.
My point here is that Jordan Henderson may want to stay at Liverpool.
Maybe.
And he may be willing to take a lower, I'm not saying like the lowest possible offer, but a lower offer to stay at Liverpool and maybe move to a city like Paris, which is obviously beautiful and maybe
terrible. It's grim, especially in the suburbs that you'd be living in as a footballer.
I appreciate that at 7:35 this morning I have decided to clutch at straws for no reason whatsoever, as if I've got like skin in the game here or something like that. But maybe there is a world in which Liverpool are like, we will happily cut you loose. You go and play with Kylian Mbappe and Neymar and Gini Wijnaldum, and under a really good coach like Maurizio Pochettino, because we won't pay you to actually stay here and play, or you won't be able to repay us with taking less money. So maybe my logic is a little bit flawed, but I guess they're in a game of chicken, which a lot of these contract negotiations tend to be. Liverpool have already proved that they will say chicken first, and they will allow you to go and talk to other people. So if Henderson is maybe using this as a bargaining chip to actually get a higher deal with Liverpool, I think Liverpool in that sort of bargaining situation are in a relatively strong position, because I mean, they're a great football club. Henderson has had some great moments with them, and I think that Liverpool know that they're in a sticky enough situation where they're not going to be investing too much in the squad until they get full stadiums back. I think that's the information that's out there as well. So it'll be next summer before a really hefty new deal will be able to be given to someone like Henderson. But we've got to remember that Henderson is older than Wijnaldum. And part of the Wijnaldum idea was that, well, what's the long-term clawback you're going to get from investing in his talents? Like, Henderson obviously has so many different things, but like, I would have thought from Henderson's perspective, this is not quite on the level of Steven Gerrard, but would there not be like a coaching opportunity at Liverpool for him afterwards? Would there not be a chance for him to have some sort of legacy after that deal?
Well, there is. I mean, like, he's been very successful. I'm just trying to find exactly what the details on it. So Henderson is better paid than Gini Wijnaldum was. So Wijnaldum's contract, according to Spottrack, was $4 million a year, roughly. I'm just trying to find out the exact number. It might have been 4.8, right? and Henderson's on about 7, according to 7.2 is what his current, so a weekly salary of 140 grand. And he obviously wants to renegotiate that with 2 years left. Or he wants to add on some years at the end.
I think that's a pretty strong position to be in, isn't it? Like if you manage to extend that so that'll take you up to the age of 33. So does Henderson wants to maybe, like, he probably sees himself going till 35, maybe even beyond, but maybe 35 at Liverpool if he's allowed to be a bit part player, still keeps the captaincy. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, Van Dijk comes back into the squad, and if Henderson is not getting his starts, Van Dijk is the de facto captain, really, isn't he? Like, that's kind of the way it would work. And if they manage to tie up all the other loose ends that are in the squad at the moment, so like they're speaking to a number of people at the moment, a number of other people who are currently out of contract in 2023, and they're hoping to tie them up to long-term deals. Van Dijk is one of those players. According
to Fabrizio Romano, Wijnaldum's going to earn 8.6 million after tax per annum, which is about 165 a week after tax. So you got to assume essentially that's double your money when it comes to what Henderson's on. So I'm not saying for a second that Jordan Henderson is motivated by money, considering the fortunes that he's made from football, and also, as you've talked about, the legacy and the fact that if he was to go and play for Paris Saint-Germain, is he more or less likely to start for England in the World Cup? I don't know. Probably less likely. The evidence seems to be that you don't get picked. I mean, Kieran Trippier, I suppose, is the outlier to that. Maybe if you won the Champions League with somebody like Paris Saint-Germain. So Paris Saint-Germain one landing spot. Are there any English teams who might be a landing spot? Like a Manchester United?
No, like, I mean, yes, he would be a brilliant signing for Manchester United if you were playing a game of FIFA. But like, in reality, I think that there's a really nice end to Jordan Henderson's Premier League career at a mid-table club, potentially. If he wasn't playing for Liverpool, he would have thought that maybe Everton could be a nice landing spot for him. Or if Sunderland managed to get their act together, and Sunderland Till I Die is a Premier League story eventually and goes back there in a couple of seasons. And I'm talking in a couple of seasons, I'm talking at the end of this contract.
Right, okay. So as a 33-year-old, you could see him going to Spurs or Arsenal or somebody.
Yeah, to Arsenal. Arsenal would take him right now, no question about that. So right now, I think that he's clearly just trying to extend his deal, and he clearly sees himself as a Liverpool player beyond 2023, if this is why we're seeing these stories. But is he going to be of use to a Premier League title challenger beyond that point? I'm not sure he is, except if that club is Liverpool. So he'd obviously have a huge material impact when it comes to maybe a younger squad and the leadership qualities that he has at the club. But he wouldn't be able to move to another Premier League challenger. And maybe even now there'd have to be a question about that, of the other top 6 clubs who would actually be interested in taking him on, given that if you're not actually Manchester City or Manchester United or Chelsea, you're probably looking to the future a little bit. You're Leicester City, basically, and you're trying to build a younger midfield, and I'm not sure if a 31-year-old Jordan Henderson actually fits in with that. And that's talking about it right now, as good as he has been and as brilliant as a player as he still is. I just don't see that happening. But I do see, in 2 years' time, a nice sunset move for him where he like battles on in mid-table Premier League. But then the easier thing to do in your career would be to go abroad and take that massive paycheck that could be on offer.
Yeah, and go and have that experience, especially for your family and your kids, and make them fluent in French or German or Spanish or Italian. Like the Italian league, he'd do pretty well in the Italian league, wouldn't he? Go and sign for one of those teams and play out a couple of seasons there. I don't know. I think that he's been very successful. I think the World Cup is probably going to factor into his plans, and so therefore my bet is that nothing happens here, right? Because he's too important to Liverpool, particularly in the absence of Wijnaldum. But I think it's interesting that these stories are popping out, and I saw Gareth Roberts suggesting on Twitter yesterday that this was just one of those off-season stories that doesn't actually end up going anywhere. But the fact that it's leaking out, do Fenway Sports Group have enough credit in the bank to sell Jordan Henderson at the moment with their Liverpool fans after everything that's happened over the last while?
That's a good question. But also, what about the literal credit in the bank? Like, is the Wijnaldum situation going to feed into this in a way where FSG are like, probably could have got a bit more money for Gino Wijnaldum had we actually pushed him out there a little bit more after we won the Premier League title. Because that, let's face it, when we were doing the Liverpool depth chart with Gareth Roberts at the start of the season, we were talking about Wijnaldum probably not being there at the end of the season. Like Liverpool, I'm not sure, could they have done more to sell him? Like they probably saw him as a really good asset for the following season, defending your Premier League crown, not being able to bring in many new signings due to COVID, and maybe that was an exceptional situation. So maybe the reason why the story is out there now is that there is a sense that they might actually be able to cash in at some point. I know that may not exactly be music to Liverpool fans' ears, but maybe that's one of the reasons why we're seeing it. There is a reason why the story is out there like that, and that's it. Like the newspapers aren't just inventing the same story at the exact same time. So somebody somewhere wants this story to be published, and it's just interesting to try and pick through who's actually the one most likely to benefit from that.
So is there a possibility that Liverpool actually have decided that rather than add on another couple of years where they're not sure how much playing time they're going to get from a 33, 34, 35-year-old, if they've got to add another 3 years for him to be happy, if it's 2 years, whatever, they're still thinking at 34, what are we going to get out of you? Then perhaps they're thinking if they can get 25, 30 million from whoever at this point, that's good business because their track record of signing players is relatively good. And, you know, you sell him, you sell a couple of others, and suddenly you have enough money to buy one of the superstar midfielders that is out there at the moment that they've been linked with. And I'm just looking at who they've been linked with over the last week or so, and it's like a slew of midfielders.
I would say that, yeah, like that is a possibility. I would say it's more likely to come from Henderson's side just to get a new deal. It's like you could make, I don't know, you wouldn't necessarily get offered a 1 year extension at this juncture.
Nicolo Barella, Sol Niguez, Renato Sanchez, Yuri Tielemans and Damsgaard are the ones that just on Sky today they've been linked with over the last 3 or 4 days.
Like that's a high quality of player, and Liverpool will, regardless of the Henderson situation, be looking to sign in that area, you might have thought as well, given if you're looking at some signings that maybe haven't worked in that department for them over the last little while. It is in midfield, like the Naby Keita signing is something that hasn't worked out whatsoever for the club. It may yet do, but it's like at this point maybe not. Like they're obviously hopeful of keeping Fabinho around and in the long term, and maybe his future is more important to the club on a footballing level than Jordan Henderson's actually is. Like I obviously there is kind of like, and I know we've said it already, there is more than just a footballing level to Jordan Henderson here. There is the importance of the man to the football club, and obviously his agent sees that as important, or somebody involved on his side of things sees it as important to actually kind of push this out. But so when it comes to the other contracts, then they're pretty confident on Alisson, it looks, at the moment, that he is going to sign a new long-term contract before the start of the coming season. Fabinho, as I mentioned, is in contract negotiations as well. That's looking positive as well. And then Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah and Sadio Mane are going to be the other three that they're talking to. They're all up in 2023. And then their fullbacks are up the year after. And that maybe isn't a problem they're dealing with right now, but they're such important players to the club and their chances of getting back to a Premier League title challenge that you wouldn't be surprised if they're sorting that out in the near future as well.
We're all essentially writing off last season and their struggles in the league, and we're all assuming that once the centre-back partnership is established and fit and ready to go from the start of the season, that Liverpool will be full title contenders at least until March or April. That's what we're assuming?
I thought what they showed at the end of last season absolutely makes them title contenders the way they finished the year, that we were able to ride off what happened for a long time before that. Once Virgil van Dijk comes back into the squad, early season you'd imagine, then things will go back to the way they were at some point.
Phil, the Henderson story, end of the road is the speculation on, it's a question mark really, on the back of the Star this morning, and that's in many of the tabloid papers as well. What's your read on this? It's a very important player, 2 years left on his deal. Probably looking at the massive amounts of money that Gini Wijnaldum's getting and go, come on, look what I've done for you. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the owners at Liverpool have scored a few own goals in the past with ticket prices, obviously the Super League, things like that. So if they were not to tie down the captain, I don't think it would go down too well. He's just now 31. He is the best captain the club have had in the Premier League era. I'm not saying he's a better player than Steven Gerrard, but I'm talking about the way he leads this team. And there was question marks about his future at Liverpool not that long ago when Brendan Rodgers was in charge. He was going to leave, and just knuckled down, became a favourite for Jurgen Klopp, and Klopp made him captain. Surprised a few people at the time, but I think it's turned out to be an inspired choice, the way he leads on the pitch and off the pitch. And Liverpool fans absolutely adore Jordan Henderson. They don't want to see Jordan Henderson leave. we've obviously seen that the likes of Van Dijk, Salah and Alisson and Fabinho are going to sign new long-term deals. Maybe Henderson has looked and thought, I should be getting a better deal than that. So this could be something that runs for a while. Now, Liverpool are actually playing tonight in Austria. They have a couple of games. The way they're doing it is they're playing 2 short games. They're playing 2 45-minute games just as part of their pre-season. This is the first bit of action they're going to get in pre-season. So it'll be interesting to see if Jurgen Klopp has asked about it. But he doesn't want to lose somebody like Jordan Henderson. And it's something that Liverpool could do without, because we obviously know last season didn't go according to plan. The encouraging signs of the way they finished last season would give plenty of optimism for this season as well. The fact that Van Dijk is back, Gomez is back, Konate has been signed. But I still think they could do with signing a midfielder and another attacker at the very least. And you're looking for a midfielder as well that can score goals, because Liverpool, we know how good the front three have been. There was signs last season the front three is no longer as potent as it has been. But it was quite clear that if you stop the front three at Liverpool, then you stop them from scoring. So Liverpool need other options in midfield, players that can score goals.
Trent Alexander-Arnold's fit and is going to be ready to go at the start of the season. Is there a chance that Curtis Jones is the midfielder that they need?
Well, he obviously played a lot more than people would have thought last season. When Lallana left, this was a chance for Curtis Jones to step in and fill those minutes. But he really impressed. He's obviously a brilliant footballer. Sometimes there was games where you felt that he just took it a bit too much out of the ball, but it's all part of the learning curve. He's an exceptional talent, and you'd imagine he's going to get more game time. Does Harvey Elliott stay at the club, or does he go out on loan? He obviously impressed with Blackburn. He's one for the future. When they signed, it was always going to be one for the future. But I just think they need somebody to replace Gini Wijnaldum. Not necessarily a like for like, but just somebody that you can rely on play at least 35, 36 league games throughout the season. Is durable, and as I said, it would also help if they can contribute with goals.
Yeah, that's not Naby Keita, obviously.